everyone is looking for the next big thing. It turns out that the next big thing is huge. We're talking about space, and in the new space age, the opportunities are of galactic proportions. If you're like me, when someone mentions the space industry, you probably think astronauts, rockets, planets, and maybe even extraterrestrials. Today, the space industry is all that. Well, maybe not the extraterrestrials, and more, a lot more. This massive next-gen sector has opportunities for a vast range of supporting and tangent industries. And, unlike other industries, there are more jobs, good-paying jobs, than people to fill them. Not only that, there are piles of patents waiting for entrepreneurs and industrialists to bring them to market, from technology to logistics and even functional textiles. Here's a sector that's bursting with real opportunities at a time when we need them most. I'm Jane Singer, and welcome to A Seat at the Table. Today I'm speaking with Shelley Brunswick, Chief Operating Officer of Space Foundation, a U.S.-based nonprofit organization dedicated to connecting the space sector with dynamic industries and individuals who see the future and want to be part of it. Shelley has parlayed a distinguished career as a space acquisition and program management leader and congressional liaison for the Air Force to her current role leading the Center for Innovation and Education. As a leading role model for women in space, she chairs the Women in Aerospace Foundation, hosts the Women's Global Gathering annually at Space Symposium, serves as the United Nations Space for Women mentor and an ambassador for Women Tech Network, and sits on the board of directors for Manufacturers Edge. Wow. Before we jump into our podcast, I'd like to suggest that if you are struggling to get your sourcing forecast report done or need further insights into what's happening, the current situation in sourcing is the answer to your prayers. It provides a sharp and concise snapshot of the situation in major sourcing nations along with key data, all in a fast and easy-to-read format. You can find details in the show notes for this podcast. Now, let's sit down with Shelley and talk about space. Shelley, I'm so happy that you're going to be on the podcast because as we were talking about before, I really see space as being the next big thing, so to speak, from many different points of view. But I think as a trend influencer, certainly as you've been pointing out in our previous conversations, driving technology and innovation, career opportunities, I'm just really excited to hear what you have to say.
Well, thank you, Jane. I'm really honored to be on your podcast, A Seat at the Table, and I've listened to some of your other speakers. I found them very enlightening, and I mentor a lot, and I've already shared one of your podcasts already with my group on LinkedIn, as well as many of the individuals I mentor. So I appreciate what you're doing and how you're helping to start a conversation and lead a dialogue. So thank you for inviting me to join you today.
Oh, well, thanks so much for the good feedback. And I think all of our previous podcast guests will be very happy to hear that as well. So tell me a little bit about the Space Foundation, and just so that our listeners can get an idea of what the foundation is and what your objectives are.
Well, thank you. At the Space Foundation, we believe space today is for a better tomorrow. And as we talk more, you'll understand that thought process. But I'll stay on the theme of what is the Space Foundation. So the Space Foundation has been in business almost 4 decades. We stood up when Space Command, Air Force Space Command, started in Colorado Springs in the U.S. We stood up with that government agency, and our role was to be that nonprofit that could help connect the government agency of Space Command with the industrial base that could provide the products and services that the Air Force or NASA might need. And so we have, our main mission is to inspire, educate, connect, and advocate on behalf of the global space community. And as you can imagine, when we started almost 40 years ago, the space industry was very different than it is today. And when we look at our mission, we really have it in 3 main pillars. So there's the pillar that you and I are doing today, which is called space awareness. How are we building awareness of the opportunities that are available in the space community? The other area we play a big role in is the service to the space community. The people and the organizations that are already in the space industry, how do we help facilitate their dialogue, their thought process, their way forward? And one of the main events we do for that is our annual space symposium held in Colorado Springs, where we bring 15,000 of our closest friends from around the world together. And they have that dialogue. It's academia, it's industry, it's government, it's civil, it's military, it's commercial. So it is really the global space community. Over 50 countries come, and there are more than 80 countries now in the that are already in the space sector with space agencies, and that's growing. And then obviously with COVID, we were not able to bring 15,000 people together. So we are now rescheduled to bring the global space community together August 2021, the 22nd through the 26th of August. But the part I really want to talk with you that we do today is our pillar that's about education, and that we are a U.S. nonprofit for education as recognized as a 501c3 by the IRS. And that's where we really talk about what is the workforce? How do we create that full workforce? What are the opportunities in the space community? And that's where it gets really exciting. And so I don't want to run too far ahead, but I hope that kind of lays a little bit out for your audience on who is the Space Foundation. We are a U.S. nonprofit, but we do business internationally. And we look forward to being thought leaders on where is the industry going? Where has it been? Where is it going? And how do we engage the future workforce that's different than the workforce of 40 years ago? So I'm really looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because I think that when you talk about jobs within the space industry and in general space, we think of it as being literally have to be a rocket scientist, so to speak, in order to be working in the space sector. You think of people who are, very advanced engineers, very high-powered scientists. And I think that, of course, there's a certain person who will relate to that because they have very, very strong math science skills. It's something that they feel connected to. But I think that, as we were talking about before, there's many, many other facets of this. And so perhaps you can explain further about the various ways people can get involved in the space industry.
Well, absolutely. Let me first start by, we're all using space in our everyday lives. So this is not a NASA, SpaceX, Japanese space agency, Japan space agency. This is every citizen pretty much on the planet uses space every day, whether that is your cell phone or clothing, shoes and items are being used with material that was developed in the space era. Cordless tools. Yeah, cordless tools were designed for space, right? Because you can't plug it in when you go outside the shuttle or the International Space Station. It's got to be cordless.
Right.
Fire retardant clothing came from the space industry.
Wow.
So you can think of, for your children, you have that fire retardant clothing or material that you use in bedding, but also think about firefighters. Think about weather prediction, how important that is if you're, an airline transporting passengers, or you're transporting supplies like the COVID vaccine, how important understanding the weather and weather patterns are to delivering that critical product or service.
Right.
And then even in the healthcare, you can look at mammogram technology or cataract surgery. So I kind of share with you that many citizens don't think about how they're using space every day. This phone call, for instance, this podcast, or going to an ATM. Our entire financial system runs on space technology. So what I want to highlight, space is for all of you, because the technology jobs of today that are for space are everything from data analytics and energy storage and healthcare and creature comforts like clothing, as we discussed, and miniaturization, advanced manufacturing, the supply chain, how important that has been shown to be during this time of COVID. And so there are jobs now for everyone to look at being in the space industry, whether you have a high school diploma or you have a PhD. There is a place for you. And I shared with you when we spoke earlier that I love fashion as well. And I shared with you that, many of these space companies like Blue Origin and SpaceX have hired fashion designers.
Wow.
Because, a space tourist who's going to pay a significant amount of money to get to experience, commercial space tourism wants to be in a very stylish outfit. And I think it was Under Armour was selected for one of the clothing attire for one of the space companies as well. So again, the fashion industry is very well important in this, as well as, transportation, healthcare, agriculture, so I share with you that there are opportunities, and our goal is if you're looking for a new career or you're transitioning, there could be opportunities in the space sector. And if you have young children at home, or you're a teacher or a guidance counselor, please look at all the career opportunities that you could be helping lead your students to, that would be exciting for them, and they would be part of the space economy beyond being an astronaut or working at SpaceX.
I think that's a very good point because people aren't really, I believe, bringing this through into the schools. And I think that it's a shame because, like you're pointing out, there's so many opportunities for jobs, and not just jobs, but jobs that have a very good career path, jobs that have potentially very good salaries.
Well, Jane, you highlight a really good point, and that's schools. And I love what schools do, and I think teachers are absolutely wonderful, and they do above and beyond. But what I do share with you about a lot of this space-inspired curriculum, it is missing in many of our school systems, and that is an area that the Space Foundation has a strong skill set in, and that is that space-inspired curriculum for schools and school districts and teachers. Because most times when you look at space, it is being taught as history. It's being taught as what we did, Sputnik, Apollo, or it's being taught as memorization, the planets, the solar system. We're not teaching it in a manner that it highlights careers and job opportunities. And I think that's a critical component of inspiring the future workforce, which is where I think there's a huge challenge, not just in the United States, but around the world in many countries. We're looking at a global space economy right now that's worth about $424 billion.
Wow.
And yeah, and that's not a tiny sum.
No.
And in the US, that space economy is 80% commercial. So that's the other exciting side. And that space economy is going to grow $1 to $3 trillion in the next 20 years. Bank of America just came out a month ago and predicted the space economy will be 1.4 trillion by 2030. So this industry, the space economy, is going to grow exponentially, and there are jobs throughout it. And more than, again, 80 nations are part of the space economy. Those median salaries in the US for space jobs are 40% above median incomes. And the other part we haven't discussed is the innovation side, the side about technology and bringing patents to market. And so, in addition to creating a robust workforce and inspiring our kids to look at careers, or adults who may have been displaced by COVID to be reskilled and upskilled into space jobs, there are patents, thousands of patents at the NASA Technology Transfer Office that could be brought to market. And again, those patents are in transportation, healthcare, materials and manufacturing, energy and energy storage. So if you want to be an entrepreneur, and maybe you don't have your own idea, I know many entrepreneurs already do, but if you want to be an entrepreneur and you haven't thought of exactly what you want to be an entrepreneur in, you could go to the NASA Technology Transfer Office and look at their thousands of patents and determine if one of them seems like something that you would like to bring to market. And NASA has some seed money in grants that they can provide to help you put together your business proposal and potentially develop your prototypes for that business plan. So there are opportunities, and there are other government agencies that have technology from the space industry that can be commercialized. So again, we need workers to go to work at companies and academia and industries, but we also need individuals who say, I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to not only create my job, but I want to be an employer for others. And that's where you're going to unlock technology to benefit our lives on Earth. And you're also going to create economic development for your community.
Wow, that's really exciting. And, just hearing about all these opportunities, you can't help but get pumped up. Do you do collaborations with companies who might be interested in developing any of these patents or collaborating on any of the aspects of that you've touched upon?
Absolutely. What we do is, before I get too far into that, if I could just share with you that the future is really bright in the space economy, as you can see with all those great opportunities. But where there is a challenge is in that workforce shortage. As I shared with you, right now, there are space companies and space related companies are trying to hire and they can't find the workers.
Wow.
And there's a skills deficit. As I shared, some individuals may have been unemployed due to COVID and they need to probably do some reskilling and upskilling, and they could come into a space industry job. And then that innovation gap. So, although the space economy for the future is robust, one of our challenges is that workforce. And that's something we have to work on together, which is exactly what you asked. Do we look at partnering? Absolutely. The Space Foundation, we can't do this alone. And so we do look at partnering. What we've done this year is we've launched our Center for Innovation and Education. And that is about creating and delivering inclusive, innovative, and sustainable workforce development and economic opportunities that enable all people to participate in the space economy. And so, again, I'm highlighting workforce development and economic opportunity as it relates to the space economy. And no one organization can do it alone. So we do look across all the stakeholders, businesses, government, education, local communities. And then again, it's that whole workforce pipeline, students and young leaders, entrepreneurs and professionals. And at the heart of it is just what you asked. We have to do it with partners, sponsors, grants, donors, and we have partnered on a number of our programs with other organizations because we cannot create that workforce for a $1 to $3 trillion economy alone. We have to work with wonderful people like you who are helping us get the message out that there are opportunities. And once people know there can be opportunities, then we can find ways for them to access the space economy.
I completely hear what you're saying. And, the interesting thing is we're at a point right now, as you've touched upon, that with COVID having swept through the entire world, you do have a tremendous amount of unemployment right now. So
Mm-hmm.
it's an ideal time for people to be considering this. You have a lot of people who've just graduated school who are looking for work. You have people, like you said, who had been in jobs and ended up, being furloughed or laid off because of this. So now should really be the time when people could jump onto this.
Absolutely. Just if you are watching the news and so on, there are a number of companies that do data analytics that are looking for workers. And right now, if you've been displaced from COVID, they're willing to help you take their reskilling programs for free so that you could reskill into the data analytics field, which we can't hire enough data analytics folks. And that's a certificate program. There are cyber certificates. There's manufacturing certificate programs. And most of those require a high school diploma. And so the thing I share is COVID has been devastating to several sectors, obviously the tourism sector, the hospitality sector, and there are opportunities for wonderful workers who are looking for opportunities to reskill and upskill. But the biggest challenge is they don't know that these opportunities are there. And let me give you an example. You ask if we partner, and absolutely, we talk to anybody who is looking for insight or can we help them with things. So we talked to one school that was in inner city LA, and it was a all-girls school, 60% African American, and it was a STEM school. And so when we met with the superintendent, again virtually because it's COVID, so it's virtual meeting, we talked about all the great opportunities in the space industry and that their students could actually get into some certification programs right now and graduate from high school with a certificate and walk into a great manufacturing job right now in the space sector. And she said, that's really great, Is there a way that I can help my students' parents get this reskilling so they can get a job because they've lost their jobs due to COVID? So I share with you that a lot of people aren't aware that there are job openings. And in California, there are opportunities to go to community college for free for your first 2 years. And several community colleges offer that certificate program in cyber or manufacturing or data analytics. So again, it's helping to build awareness that there are opportunities available and that this is a great opportunity if you've lost your job to look at getting that reskilling and upskilling and come into an area where we desperately are looking for workers.
Yeah, you're right. It is difficult to not only get the word out, but to convince people that this would be an exciting industry. But I think that one of the things that's probably helping is that space has been glamorized by people like Elon Musk and Richard Branson, and so many of, there's been more celebrities associated with it now. So I think that's got to be a bonus.
That really has brought space to the forefront again when you're watching, this year alone, when we talk about COVID, how has COVID impacted the space sector? Really, it has not had an impact. It had a slight dip, and then it has continued to grow because there have been 3 Mars missions from 3 different countries launched this year, from China, the US, and the UAE. We've seen SpaceX launch Americans from American soil in an American-made space vehicle to the International Space Station. And we've seen manufacturing in space. So you can see, Amazon. You're seeing SpaceX putting up small sats to provide communication, small sat communications constellations, so that we'll have communications and internet provided by space-based assets, which for many parts of the world, even the US, having satellite communications and internet is a game changer for communities that do not have internet access. And obviously that can lead to other inequalities down the road by not having that internet access. So space in 2020 has been extremely robust. And it's, again, an exciting time, even though it has been extremely challenging with COVID and what's been going on around the world. So I'm grateful for Elon Musk and Richard Branson, but I also want to highlight that they're attracting a certain type of individual that's going to be excited about space. They're probably attracting 5% of the workforce, somebody who wants to be a scientist or an astronaut or a rocket, working rockets. So they're attracting that type of crowd. Very, very good. We need all those STEM skills, and we like to let NASA really lead that excitement in that area. At the Space Foundation, we really are looking at that other 95% of the workforce, the 95% that may think space is not for me. I don't see anybody that looks like me in the space industry. I'm not being encouraged to pursue the space industry. And as you can read from what I'm saying, I'm talking about, underserved and undertapped workers, inner city, rural, minorities, women. We're looking at where is this future workforce going to come from? And it's going to come from a sector that hasn't necessarily seen space for them. And it's not just them, it may also be their parents, right? So if I'm looking at young girls or young inner city kids, this may be a really hard reach to think that I could be part of the space sector at NASA. Absolutely a possibility. But there are other opportunities for all students to find a place in the space economy. So although I think what Richard Branson and Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos are doing is fantastic, and it's democratizing space so that all citizens can really participate in this activity. The jobs that are available are not just in that launch sector astronaut space set of cislunar orbit and going to Mars. There's also those opportunities of fashion designers and business professionals and legal experts and STEM professionals.
Well, it's interesting because you're talking about some of the sort of tangent industries. And, based on what you're saying, there's probably a lot of opportunities for people who are in textile science and development people who are in supply chain management, people who, like you said, are in manufacturing, logistics. It sounds like there's an awful lot of opportunities where there would be crossover skills.
Absolutely. I mean, I shared with you a number of them, like data analytics, cybersecurity, like you said, textiles and advanced manufacturing, huge opportunity there. I always like to highlight many people think of manufacturing as that old 1950s, dark, dirty, dated and dangerous.
Right, the sweatshops, right?
Exactly. And textiles and advanced manufacturing is now 3D printing, and you're in a lab coat, and you're in a clean room. And again, those opportunities are at SpaceX as well as the entire supply chain for space and aerospace industry. So, and those skills again require a certificate versus a PhD or a 4-year degree. So there's opportunities to come into those areas. I've walked the floor at SpaceX. It is bright and light and an exciting place to work. And so for individuals who think about advanced manufacturing, that is the future, and that is what currently is manufacturing. And we talked about textiles, obviously, materials, and it's an exciting time. And if you want to be an entrepreneur, there are patents, again, related to the textiles and creature comfort and healthcare and all those waiting for you to go look at the NASA Technology Transfer Office and look at bringing that product to market. So I share with you that whether you want to have a job working for another company like SpaceX or in manufacturing, or you want to be an entrepreneur, there's a place for you and there are opportunities.
Wow, how incredible. Before we go on, how do people contact you if they're interested?
Great. Well, that's always a wonderful question. We should always start with probably, how do you reach out for more information? So the first place I always share with people is I am on LinkedIn. Shelley Brunswick. I'm on LinkedIn, and I do check my LinkedIn email every day.
Okay.
And so if you reach out to me through LinkedIn, obviously you can also go to the Space Foundation website, which is spacefoundation.org, and you can connect with us through our website. And those are the two best ways to reach us. We do obviously have a Space Foundation LinkedIn and Facebook and Instagram that you can connect with us on social media, so you can stay apprised of all the activities we do. We haven't gotten into kind of our programming yet, but many of our activities are both free as well as a fee. But we have lots of free things going on. We have an activity coming up that we've partnered. You asked about partnerships. We have partnered with L3 Harris, and we are bringing virtually audience with an astronaut or audience with an engineer. So if you're a parent or a teacher or a student and you're interested in learning more about being an engineer or being an astronaut, those are free programs that you can access. We also have free lesson materials for teachers. I shared with you, we're missing some space-inspired curriculum in the school system. So if you're a teacher and you're like, I would really like to bring more of that space-inspired curriculum into my classroom, I want to start helping children find a career path, we do have free lesson materials on our website as well. If you're an entrepreneur, we do have an entrepreneurship program called Space Commerce Entrepreneurs. And we were doing in-person workshops, but obviously with COVID, we've canceled those for now. But we do have webinars available. What is the space economy? What is being an entrepreneur? How do I get funding? Many of these webinars are just great if you just want to be an entrepreneur. What is intellectual property? What is cybersecurity? So we have programs both free and for fee on our website. So that probably shared a lot with you. And I hope your listeners, when they go to spacefoundation.org, they find something that either resonates with them or something that they can share with others.
Well, I think that's really exciting, and I hope that people take advantage of it. I just wanted to ask you about one more thing, and that is that you had said that the program, although it's a U.S.-based program, you actually do have an international reach. Could you talk about that a bit?
Sure. Let me do one of my things that I'd like to share with you. How do we work through this process? Because I did share with you a lot of parts and pieces and what is that process. The first step in this workforce development roadmap is about building awareness. And again, I shared with you, that's why I'm with you today. Building awareness. People have to be aware that there's an opportunity. And then we have to create an access point. And I just shared with you, you can come to our website and we have material, whether it's being an entrepreneur or space inspired curriculum for teachers or audience with an astronaut. How do you have an access point into the space community? Then it's about training. And we talked about that today too. Do you need to be some reskilling and upskilling? Do you want to get involved in some programs? If you're a student and your school doesn't have a space inspired curriculum, maybe you join a robotics club or a club after school that you start learning more about the space industry. So you have to have training. Then we talk about connecting. I shared with you about Space Symposium, connecting that global space community. And even during COVID, we have taken Space Symposium online. We call it Space Symposium 365. And that's a way for that global space community to continue to learn, to network, and to do business. So you have to build those connections. And then it's about mentoring. And mentoring to me is almost the first step. And what I want to share with you about mentoring is there are many mentoring programs. So I am involved in the UN Office of Outer Space Affairs Space for Women Mentor Program. So if you're looking for a mentor anywhere in the world, you could go to the UN Office of Outer Space Affairs, Space for Women, and you can find a mentor that's either an entrepreneur or a scientist or healthcare that can help you on your journey. There's also Women Tech Network that has a mentoring program, Women in Aerospace, and many others. So I share with you that the Space Foundation is a U.S. organization. We do business internationally. We partner with organizations internationally like Women Tech Network that is in 181 countries, and their goal is to grow to 1 million minorities and women. So there are opportunities, whether you come to the Space Foundation or you want to look at a mentoring program. Another great program that we offer at the Space Foundation is for those young professionals, 35 and under, because we've learned that the workforce pipeline can be leaky. We're losing workers. We lose women as their careers progress, and then we don't have women to take over senior leadership roles. So we've created our New Generation Young Leadership Program. Again, we offer many free programs at the Space Foundation. So it's about building those relationships and connecting and looking at that workforce development roadmap to help individuals find their way through the space economy and find their place.
Well, it's really exciting, and I think that there's so many people who are looking for opportunities right now, and the fact that you're able to provide this in something, not saying that there's anything wrong with any kind of a job, because nothing wrong with doing a day's work for a day's pay, but I think that so many of the jobs in the past few years have been low-skilled jobs, right? Working in warehouses, doing e-commerce fulfillment and things like that. And I don't see there's been a lot of huge job opportunities coming on. So this is something that I think would just be fabulous.
It is fabulous. And again, this isn't only happening in the United States. This is around the world. There are opportunities. There are more countries every day joining the space economy. And again, there are those entrepreneurship opportunities where you can bring space technology forward. And that's here on Earth. That's creating jobs on Earth. Since 1983, GPS has created a $1.3 trillion economy.
Has it
GPS.
really? Wow.
Yes. That is a government program, right? The Air Force provided GPS initially for the military, but it was then provided for the world free. And that is now a $1.3 trillion dollar economy. So when you think about it, what is that next technology that the government or other organizations are investing in that's going to unlock that type of economic growth? And so when you think about ordering a Lyft or an Uber, I'm not sure if those entrepreneurs thought that I'm using space technology to create this business, but their business model, Uber Eats and many others, are based on space technology. And so again, people may not think about I'm bringing space technology to market and commercializing it, but they're utilizing space technology to create a wonderful business and to help grow jobs and economic development. So whether somebody's thinking, I want to be a space entrepreneur like Elon Musk, or I just want to be an entrepreneur and I want to find a great product or service that fills a need and solves a problem, there are space patents out there that you can bring to market. And don't think about it as space technology. Think about it as I'm helping humanity.
Wow. Shelley, this has really been such an exciting conversation, and it's gotten me thinking about so many opportunities and so many possibilities. And I'm sure that anybody who's listening to this has to be totally pumped up about this right now and also be thinking about how they can possibly get involved. So I just want to thank you so much for taking the time and to share your insights, your expertise, and your vision with us.
Well, thank you, Jane. And again, I'm honored to be joining you at a seat at the table. I'm grateful for you giving me the opportunity to join you today.
My pleasure, Shelley. If you enjoyed this episode, why not subscribe to our podcast so you'll never miss another episode? And if you're struggling to get your sourcing forecast report done, the current situation in sourcing is the answer to your prayers. It provides a sharp and concise snapshot of the situation in major sourcing nations along with key data in an easy-to-read format, of course. You can find details in the show notes for this podcast. Thank you, and see you in the next podcast.